Ah, yes, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jack Farmer, and I am joined by my friend Andy Rossi, but also this week I am joined by James Kincaid, the man who is built for this kind of thing, a voice that's built in a lab for commentary and talking and podcasts. James Kincaid, Andy Rossi, how are you guys doing? We'll start with you, James. You're the special guest. How are you doing?
Well, another day, another day older. It's not the years, it's the mileage, Jack Farmer. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And Andy, I see you all the time, so I'm not that excited to talk to you, but I guess how are you doing?
Similar to James, I went skiing yesterday, and I feel like somebody just attacked me with a bat for a few hours or so. So feeling pretty old myself.
You're not going to get sympathy for going skiing all day.
Here's what I got, Andy. I fell asleep on the couch and had been icing my back for a week since. That's how old I've been feeling lately. And sleeping on the couch is one of my favorite things. So I guess that's out in the new year.
Right. Yeah, they as you get older, they let you get ready for the fact that you're going to make noises when you stand up and sit down, but no one gets you ready for the fact that you're not going to be able to stand all the way straight up for about 5 to 10 seconds every time. That's the thing that caught me by surprise. But hey, we're talking about getting older. Speaking of getting old, let's talk about what this show is. This is the Evolution of Movies show, where we watch movies and then we talk about them like it's a book club, but call it the Evolution of Movies because we always watch a movie that came out 1 year after the last movie we watched. So we start in 1980, then go to 1981, 1982, but for now, we're still only in 1981. So let me take you back to a time when movie theaters had hits like Clash of the Titans, Escape from New York, and of course, Porky's. But we're not talking about any of those. We're talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark, a movie IMDb describes as saying, in 1936, archaeologist and adventurer Indiana Jones is hired by the U.S. government to find the Ark of the Covenant before Adolf Hitler's Nazis can obtain its awesome powers. Rotten Tomatoes has it sitting at 95%. This is a classic. I've seen it a bunch. James, you're the guest. Before we get to your thoughts, Andy, what were your thoughts going into this one, and do you think it deserves a 95%?
I honestly think this might be one of the greatest movies of all time, to be honest with you, just because it led to so many parodies of it. And I just was very excited to watch it. I hadn't seen it since I was very young, so I was wondering how it would hold up. But going from 1980 to 81, boy, was there a difference in cinema based on our podcast.
Yes, big changes. Flash Gordon to this was a very interesting change. James, you're the guest, so I always like to ask, had you seen this movie before? Of course you have, but what were your thoughts going into it this time as you get ready for the show?
Well, I was thrilled that when you asked me to be on, that this was the movie that we were going to be talking about. It is a movie that has been so near and dear to my heart for so very long. And going back and rewatching it, I tried distinctly to rewatch it through the lens of it being a standalone. Like, we're only talking Raiders. We're not talking about, one of the greatest trilogies of all time, but just this movie. Evolution of movies. Evolution might have peaked right here. I mean, it is a dang near perfect adventure. It is a popcorn movie in the best and truest sense of the word, and I think modern movies could learn a lot from the storytelling of how they did Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was so much fun.
Yeah, this movie, like you said, so much stuff has been so iconic from it. It's hard to watch and not think, were they being a parody or were they actually doing the movie on its own? And you realize, oh no, everything that is a parody after this is because of this, like the way he's dressed, the whip, everything about it. It's such a good adventure. I was super excited to see it.
Iconic. So many iconic things that sprang from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yes. And so we're about to get into it. But first, everyone's favorite part of any show or podcast, give us a like, a comment, a share, subscribe, 5-star reviews, and make sure to follow these guys on social media at James Kincaid, at Just Andy Rossi, and at Real Jack Farmer. 5-star reviews. Why don't you? It only takes a second. It makes me feel so good. You guys ready to get into this movie?
Oh, yeah.
Let's do it. So we start South America, 1936. Indy is going through the jungle and comes across poisonous darts from people who don't want him there. That doesn't stop him, though, because he's got a whip and he's not afraid to use it. Indy and a young Dr. Octopus go into a cave, dodging traps, spiders, and pits with ropes. Indy swaps a bag of dirt for a golden statue, and that makes the temple angry. So the young Doc Ock betrays Indy, and Indy is forced to run for his life from a giant boulder in one of Hollywood's most iconic scenes. His rival steals the idol, and Indy runs for his life before escaping on a plane with his pal. James, tell us about, at this point in the movie, the world and the characters that have been set up for us.
I mean, this has to go down in history as one of the all-time great opening sequences ever, and it accomplishes so much in a short amount of time. It doesn't feel rushed, though. They give you exposition naturally. They give you high octane adventure, world building, all of these great things in this opening sequence. The Boulder. I mean, There's not a more iconic rock in Hollywood other than Dwayne Johnson. I mean, it's insane. All the things that they do, even going back and rewatching this and hearing Indy talk about his rival Forrestal, like, I mean, just the little, like, the shredded cheese of world building on top of what we're going on, and the way this movie is just bookended and starting with this, that we're getting this fantastic introduction of what we're doing. We're in the jungle. We're going to this cool old temple. Instantly, kids around the world, like, this archaeology stuff seems pretty cool. I might open up a textbook and learn about these things. But and again, in sort of my approach in rewatching was, this is the first time, if you go back to 1981, I have never lived in a world in which there was no Indiana Jones. But I'm trying to think of this through the lens of moviegoers and their first introduction to Indiana Jones. I kind of am a little bit jealous of, like, my parents, that they got to experience who he was for the first time with no sort of pretense or expectations. And his very first, like, we see him from behind, and then, God, that glorious face of Harrison Ford stepping, into frame for the first time is just so incredible. And just the way that they're sort of showing you who that character is and everything, one of the most masterful opening scenes, the traps, everything about it, the whip, right down to the iconic sound effect of it, the fedora, chef's kiss.
This movie, and you say it so perfect, one of the best intros, I think, of any movie, because I feel like this intro on its own is a story that could stand up. If they just said, like, in this day and age, if they just released this on YouTube as a short or a proof of concept or whatever, I'm in. I'm sold. I want to go on adventures with Indiana Jones. Andy, I have a bunch of little questions, but because this is such a iconic scene, I just want you to kind of take it and go free with it. Tell us about your thoughts walking into this.
Yeah, well, a lot of the things James said, I definitely agree with everything. The set decoration is amazing. And I just thought it was funny because I've been on the Indiana Jones ride at Disneyland, and I'm like, oh, it's just like the ride. I'm like, well, obviously. But
they copied the ride so much for this.
Yeah, they did a great job copying the ride. The thing I literally wrote in all caps is sexy Harrison Ford. When he walks into the screen, I was like, dang, Harrison Ford, man. He was, I mean,
he
still
would get
handsome gents. He's an older guy now, but man, when he first made his appearance as Indiana Jones, just perfect. I was trying to think, I'm like, I don't know who would have done a better job as Indiana Jones. He is Indiana Jones. But I didn't remember how quickly we saw the boulder. And I remember that spider scene with all the spiders on their back. I remember that freaked me out as a kid. I didn't remember that was so fast, and Alfred Molina dies so quickly. Like, it's just like all these things that I kind of remembered before, I thought had happened over time in the film. So to see the boulder, like, right away, you're like, yeah, there's the boulder. So it's super cool. Yeah, and I agree with you, Jack. It could have been just a film on its own. I would have been done after that. We could have done a review just on the first 5 minutes.
I love how they keep it both scary and fun. You mentioned the spiders on the back, which is silly the way they present it, but also terrifying at the same time. So is that this whole movie has that mix of, this is scary, but I also feel safe and it's fun along the way as well. James, I want to talk to you about something about these traps, right? And I was just thinking to myself, how fun it must have been, assuming this was a real world, building traps for a temple would be fun, right? Like, could you imagine everyone hanging out like, hey, step on that stone. I got to see if the dart shoots real quick.
Yeah, and then he's dead.
Yes, it works.
Or like, hey, let's get this boulder up here real quick. No, it won't get tripped for like 1,000 years, but when it does,
it's gonna be sweet.
Cool.
And it didn't even kill him. Like, I mean, I imagine the ghosts and they're like, God, he got out. Like, I mean, we got the one dude, but not him. Like, the Boulder guys must have been very disappointed. But
right.
no, I mean, the traps in the temple were. This is the thing that sort of like set up all that, like the tropes of what the booby trap temple are. You know, it was the perfect execution of that.
It was, yeah, as you guys said at the top, chef's kiss. One little interesting thing I saw, by the way, though, I was watching the show, The Movies That Made Us, and I was watching the Jurassic Park episode, and funny story, they were filming in Hawaii in Jurassic Park, and there was a storm that came through, and they couldn't get the cast out of Hawaii, so they had to get a pilot to, in real life, fly them out, and that pilot was none other than the pilot in this opening scene. He's a real pilot.
And Harrison Ford.
He actually was the guy that brought the cast from Jurassic Park back to the mainland during this storm. So I thought that was a funny...
I wonder if his pet snake Reggie was along for the ride.
I sure hope so. Reggie... By the way, another great storytelling thing where they give us that little I hate snakes, and it's not for nothing. Something happens later, folks.
Completely organic. The way they layer everything in. I mean, this was Lucas and Spielberg at the height of their powers.
Yes, and so we get back to the mainland here, or I guess back home to America, I'm assuming. And Indy is actually a school teacher, and the students love him. Indy tries to get money to fund more adventures, but the government wants Indy to go find a Nazi art collector. Indy deduces that they found the Ark, and it's got a cool backstory to it that Indy explains. The military pays Indy to go find the thing, so off he goes, but someone appears to be watching him. Andy, I want to talk to you, because I know you're an actor. This was a scene. We're watching Harrison Ford. We talked about how handsome he is earlier. He's an adventurer. We know him as Han Solo at this point. I don't really remember what he was working on, but do you think it was a weird stretch to see him as a teacher at this point? Was it like if we were to see Ryan Gosling as a professor, where we'd all go, yeah, right, he's not a professor.
I did think it was funny, like thinking like this guy's teaching classes like Ross Geller, and then he's like going out like shooting people and like whipping things. I just was like, I've never had that cool of a teacher. That's like, the girl literally has on her eyes, it says "love you." Did you catch that? Like it's like written on her eyelids. I'm like, man, this guy, he's got everything. He's smart and charismatic, and he's out like doing all these adventures. So I just thought it was funny having him, showing him as a teacher.
And in her defense, I would have had "love you" written on my eyelids as well.
And my forehead.
James, this was, I say this scene is where the story really starts, but it also does something important here. And it tells us that Indy's not just the adventurer. He's not just the guy that can get through booby traps, but he's also very cool and very intelligent and very motivated to find more archaeological treasures.
Yeah, and this is sort of a Michael Crichton-esque sort of establishing the story here, that the Michael Crichton, R.I.P., had this wonderful way in his books of sort of setting up through science or knowledge what the fantastical part of his story is going to be, and that's exactly what Raiders of the Lost Ark does here. So you take us to the university setting, instant credibility. It is very interesting, though, like Andy said, that, you know, Dr. Jones just watched Dr. Octopus get green goblined on some spikes in a temple, and then he's just going back and having all these, the students ogle him and everything. And shout out to the kid that left an apple awkwardly as he left the classroom as well. Almost fell off the table. But again, yeah, I mean, it's just a great establishment of we're getting more lore, like you mentioned, very cool backstory of the Ark of the Covenant. and it's all sort of given to us through this prism of like credibility. So we're along for the ride. We're off and running, and shout out William Hootkins, aka Porkins from Star Wars, working for the feds in this movie. So that one didn't even get by me as a kid. I was like, wait, I know you. Your X-wing blew up.
Yeah, you shouldn't be here. You died.
Yeah,
a long time
exactly.
ago, far away.
Yeah.
And Andy, this was one of those things where, as a story, and as James is saying, I like how somehow they find a way to almost beat us over the head with what the Ark is, but it doesn't feel like they're beating us over the head.
Yeah.
He literally has to explain the whole thing, but it doesn't feel like I'm being explained to. This was set up so perfectly.
It's so great too, because like we talked about, the opening scene was so great, and then all of a sudden you're in like a school, and then it's like, oh, we're gonna go back to that adventure, but it's going to be even more stakes. I'm in. So it was like such a great setup too, to be like, I even watching the other day, I was just like, oh, I can't wait. And I'm like, wait, I've seen this before, but I can't wait.
It was a masterclass in an organic exposition dump, you know?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. And James, I want to double down on something you said about Michael Crichton. Was he, I'm just going to throw out some wild comment here. Was he the greatest author to write for big budget movies before big budget movies were possible?
I think so.
Because he was doing these before he knew you could turn them into movies, but they're perfectly fit for movies.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think Michael Crichton could have, should he had the desire to, could have written a wonderful Indiana Jones story as well. And I mean, yeah, very well said. Love Michael Crichton.
So as we continue the story, they're in Nepal now, and Indy and his shot-drinking ex talk about Abner and trying to get an artifact, and it's not going too well for him. He offers to buy the item, but she's still being a jerk about how things ended up last time until the Nazis show up and go looking for Indy. But Indy is also looking for them, and he destroys the whole bar, fighting them off. After they get away, Indy's ex says she is now his partner. Andy, this is that classic odd couple, new partner pairing. We got a new wrinkle in the story.
I thought it was great too, because you're doing the drinking contest, so already you're like, oh, this is a tough gal. So, you know, I love that in films. She's not just going to be like a damsel in distress. And I even thought watching it, because I had forgotten, but I'm like, she's not doing a great job of being drunk. She just drank all that stuff. She should be pretty hammered. And then later I figured out, oh, okay. But yeah, the whole part is just amazing. I love the shootout, and one of my favorite characters, I don't know the actor's name, the guy that comes in as the main, I guess the main Nazi,
right.
that burns his hand. That guy is unbelievable in this movie. I was so scared of him. I felt like his character has led to a lot of parodies of that. Like, I think even in Wonder Woman, it seemed like that guy was kind of doing a impression of that guy.
I always felt like Home Alone sort of homaged it when Joe Pesci got his hand burned by the door. Like, I don't know. For me as a kid, that always struck me as something straight out of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That's a good call. And Andy, to your point about the guy influencing things too, and beyond that, Who Framed Roger Rabbit? I always thought that the bad guy in that seems like a rip from this movie, and even in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the character from the Captain America movies that lives in the computer now. I can't remember his name.
Arnim Zola.
Yes, that's it. He also seemed very similar to this. I don't know. What a weird casting. Like, could you imagine how excited you'd be to get this role, but then be like, yeah, we're casting you because you just look like the perfect Nazi.
Yeah, congrats. You're one of the most iconic Nazis of all time.
And James, I want to add to this because this is, of course, now there's gunfire, there's fighting, people are running around. This is the scene I felt was where real stakes got added with the Nazis. They're not just a mysterious shadow force that is being talked about, but they're getting their hands dirty and literally trying to kill our heroes.
Yeah, I think it was important to note, too, because it has been a while since I've just sort of watched Raiders and only thought about it in the context of Raiders. This takes place in 1936, so it's important for all you To paraphrase Norm Macdonald, I don't know how many of you are history buffs or not.
Yeah.
But we were not at war at this point in time with Germany and the Nazis and everything like that. So it is this very much sort of shadow war that was going on at this point in time. So yes, those stakes were there. The tensions were still on the ascent at this point in time in the world, and I think they did a good job of sort of portraying that. Nobody liked the Nazis still at this point if we're not living in Germany. And to sort of double down on what Andy said, yes, I believe it's Ronald Lacey that played the Gestapo interrogator. He's just so. I always think about just such a subtle delivery, but when he goes, "Your fire is dying," it's like, oh no, he's gonna do some buck wild stuff here. That's not good. It was such a great fight scene too, and the proper amount of stakes mixed with restrained levity, like when Indy asks for a whiskey, whereas in the current MCU, and sorry, I'm going to be the old man yelling at Cloud, they probably would have done about 3 or 4 whiskey jokes, but all Indy needs is one, because this is an efficient, crisp movie.
Yes, absolutely. And just tons of good stuff there. But we're going to move on to Cairo. This movie's all over the world. They don't stay put here. In Cairo, Indy's buddy is helping him, but warns him about the dangers of the Ark. Nazis are there, and street fights occur, including one with a big sword and a gun. Marion gets kidnapped in a basket, and Indy blows up a truck. And I didn't realize how much of a cold-blooded murderer Indiana Jones is. But the truck blows up, and Indy thinks Marion's dead. He runs into Bellick, and they chat before kids come in and help him make an escape from the bar. So this is one of those things where, and James, we'll go to you here. What I love about this is, as I say at the top here, it's like the whole world and they're traveling, but you can feel almost a circle of space between all the characters and the art getting smaller, and therefore these confrontations are happening more and more.
Yeah, a few things I want to point out about this sequence here is, one, like we talk about how many sort of things were taken from Raiders of the Lost Ark. The Raiders of the Lost Ark took things from what came before it as well, but in a true homage, not in a derivative fashion. So like even when they travel, doing sort of like the Casablanca map, ... as like the plane lands, and of course George Lucas, a huge fan of the pulp adventure series and stuff like that. But Marion getting blown up here, once again, going back and looking at it as a standalone movie and trying to put myself in my father's shoes, watching it for the first time, she's dead. Like, as far as we know, like, we do not have the benefit of having seen this before. Right. She's dead, and that's like, I thought they pulled that off very well, much more so than I had given it credit for in the past. But I gotta say, what was the deal with that truck with like the Acme dynamite and like go back and rewatch it, and it's just like it's a truck with just a grip of explosives in it and then one basket. It's a little absurd, but I love it for that. And I mean, talk about the scene with the swordsman and the fact that he does this big production show of it, and then Indy just shoots him. I mean, one of the most sort of remembered scenes from the movie.
I was going to say, bringing the sword to a gunfight thing is probably one of the greatest scenes in the movie, too. A movie filled with greatest scenes in Hollywood. That moment is so great there.
I watched it back. I had to rewind it again because it just makes me laugh every time.
According to legend, that was improvised. Originally, they were supposed to have this sort of duel and battle. I think it was going to be whip versus sword, and I guess it was really hot where they were filming, and Harrison Ford was like, what if I just shoot him?
You know what? I remember hearing that. Yeah, I think you're right, for sure.
So you're saying Indy shot first?
Absolutely. Damn right.
So there was a great line here, by the way, where when Indy goes to see his buddy, he says, "Sit down before you fall down." And it feels very Tupac Shakur saying in a diss track or something. I love that little line. He actually says it kind of nice, too, but he's just like, "Sit down before you fall down." I was like, dang, that's a little harsh. Say to a guy you rob constantly. But yeah, Andy, how do we come to grips with the fact? Like I said, maybe like James said, I'm watching this movie differently. Indiana Jones just murders people recklessly throughout this entire film, and maybe I'm becoming the guy yelling at clouds. But like, is this our hero? This blatant Dexter-like murderer just destroying everyone in front of him?
It is great too. Like, see, like I love the fight choreography in the scene too. He's just like he's throwing Marion around everywhere too. He like tosses her one way, tosses her on a truck. The fight choreography is so great. But I kept thinking, I'm like, this guy's a teacher. And he's just like fighting people, shooting people, killing people. Yeah. And you know what guy we didn't talk about is I don't remember there being a monkey in this movie.
Yeah.
The monkey's got a pretty significant part.
Absolutely does.
Yeah, he's a very important part of the movie, and in fact, we got to talk about that.
It made me sad.
Yeah, Indy's buddy.
Well, he was a Nazi monkey, though.
Okay, thank goodness,
I mean, as far as monkeys go, this isn't the one going to space for America. This was a Nazi monkey.
Okay, now I feel better. Thank you. That's why we do this show. I need clarity on why they kill.
We canceled that monkey.
Right. He did look cute in his little Nazi outfit, but
yeah.
That's going to get taken out of context.
Right. That'll be the thing. One day I'm going to be running for president, and that'll be the clip that gets clipped out. But Indy's buddy says that the Nazis somehow have a duplicate of the headpiece they need to use to find the Ark, though they realize it's not completely correct. However, so the Nazis are in the wrong spot. Also, this is where the monkey dies. And I'm going to be honest, I would have rather Indy died than the monkey.
Wow.
And I'm supposed to just move on from this. But anyways, the fellas sneak into a very poorly guarded tomb and find out that the place that they're looking for is right where you would expect it to be based on the model of the city. Indy ends up at the Nazis, and he leaves his girlfriend to be a prisoner so he can continue his treasure hunt. Indy's still becoming kind of a jerk, leaves his girl behind with Nazis so he can continue looking for a treasure. And we give Nicolas Cage a hard time about looking for treasures. James, am I wrong about loving this cute little Nazi monkey?
Well, I mean, his political affiliation at the time was, needless to say, unfortunate, but I think we can blame his eye-patched trainer on that front. But while we're talking about the monkey and everything like that, I think huge shout-out all the way around to the supporting cast. I mean, we mentioned, the Gestapo interrogator, how, imposing he was and how great he did with his role. Belloc, as the rival to Indiana Jones. But how about Sala as his sort of loyal friend and everything? Yeah, absolutely. So Gimli, or Sliders, if you're a fan of Sliders. Is anybody? I'm the only one. Okay, anyway.
No, I
Jerry O'Connell classic.
Yeah.
But Sala was so great when they go. Yeah.
Joe's apartment.
Hey, Tomcats.
That's fair. You guys win this round.
When they go to the Well of Souls, Sala in this movie is so, incredibly quotable. It's like, asps, very dangerous. You go first. It's just, it's so good. Like they just, everyone around this movie is, just in the sphere of Indiana Jones was so really well done. But I'm glad you brought up him leaving Marion, because as a kid, I didn't really think very deeply about it, but that was a great way to show that, Indy is kind of a flawed hero, or this is not Captain America. This is not Steve Rogers, who I love just busting in there, win at all costs. I'm going to find a way to save Marion and everything like that. Indy is just a guy, so he has to be more strategic about it. He's got flaws. He's a little rough around the edges, and that's a very compelling character.
Yeah, and it's speaking of characters, and you mentioned all the side characters, and Andy, I want your take on this. It's interesting that we talked about the MCU before, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We talked about all these characters. If this was today, and if this was Marvel, I think they would have like 6 characters they could peel away into their own side stories and their own adventures. I could see just about everyone in this movie having their own limited run TV series or movie of some kind.
Except for the monkey, because he's dead.
Well, prequel, baby, prequel. How did he fall in with this eye-patched guy? Is that Nick Fury?
And that's where we find out that he's actually just undercover, and we were supposed to love him the whole time.
Yeah.
And that's why he was helping Indy in the end. And then you guys feel bad for laughing about it, eating bad dates.
Have too many of those.
Yeah, So yeah, just tons of great stuff here as far as the character development and stuff goes. And
It is great though how you talked about how they find the right place to dig. It just makes me laugh how they're right next to it. Clearly the other guys can see, oh, what is this other team of people starting to dig over there for? And they just go, we'll just let them be.
and when they show the light in the model, you see the light go right on top of a tomb, like in the middle of the street. I'm like, yeah, that's the first place I would think this is hidden, is in the giant tomb. It's not like in the middle of nowhere, or some weird spot. It stops right exactly where you would expect something like this to be hidden.
I just thought it was funny because it was so close.
Right.
It's literally like the next thing over.
Yeah, don't buy that. They're doing their own thing.
Oh, yeah,
they're fine.
They probably just got a metal detector trying to find some loose change.
Even Sala lowering Indy down into the map room to begin with, and then Sala gets taken away by the Nazis, but it's still just fine. They just like usher him away from the well, and Sala just goes right back, but with like a rope of flags and laundry at that point.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that Indy was just free after that. That was kind of a weird cut for me. I was like, wasn't he captured? Because it wasn't just rags; it was like a Nazi flag. But then,
I think that's what Sala had to grab to help him get it because they took his rope or something like that. But yeah, then they go through the camp and they're kind of like bugging Indy, and none of the Nazis questions like, "Hey, why is he white?" I mean, which I get, is a question that today we can't ask, but I feel like in 1936 they would.
Right. Well, no, I mean, you're not dressed like, you're not one of our soldiers. We don't know you. Why are you walking around our camp willy nilly? But yeah. I guess that's the thing. But also, this is where we find out they have the duplicate of the headpiece. And James, to your point earlier, we find out, I can't remember exactly where we find out it's because of the hand, but of course we see the hand and it's got the burn in it. And that's why they only have one side of the headpiece. And just what a cool, again, a callback that is both gruesome and interesting.
Yeah, so, I love that. It's such a great scene with him just lifting it up. I forget what establishing shot it comes in, but yeah, and also makes me think of Home Alone.
Right. Which is important. So the Nazis bring the bad guy. I'm spacing on his name? Indy's rival,
Belloc,
to torture or to speak with Marion. She pretends that she likes him and she wears a wedding dress while Indy's getting close to the Ark. But there's like a lot of snakes and they find the Ark, but the bad guy finds Indy and he leaves with the Ark and the good guys end up with the snakes. The duo do escape and there's a showdown on a runway with the scene that I remember most from this movie. And that's when the propeller shreds bald bolts to death. Andy Rossi. This is probably, again, another iconic scene. We got them falling in with the snakes here.
Yeah, and even to back it up just a little bit before that is kind of, for me as a viewer, I was like, oh, here we go. Because I had a problem with her drinking so much and being able to just walk around. I'm like, if I drank that much, I'd be dead. So like, then it comes back. She wants to have a drink with this guy. And I'm like, oh, here we go. She's going to drink and then she's going to be able to stay sober. She's going to kick some ass. But instead, our lead villain comes in and puts an end to that. But did anybody else think that scene was so weird with him putting a dress on her? He just so happened to have a dress laying around. I don't know. I just thought that was
perfectly.
He's like, I got this dress for you. I think that happened in Jack when we watched She's All That. I just so happen to have this dress that's going to fit you perfectly. It's like, oh.
I think She's All That was copying this movie when they did
Belloc, also a big Sixpence None the Richer fan, so he always has a dress on hand for his makeover project.
Right.
It all comes together.
Belloc's like, you're going to be the prom queen when I'm done with you.
Always be prepared. But yeah, you asked about the snakes, and yeah, just another great callback because you see the snake in the plane, and most of us have seen all the Indiana Jones movies, so we know that the deal with Indy and the snakes. So yeah, it is kind of crazy to be like, okay, he doesn't like one snake. What about thousands of snakes? So I thought that was pretty great.
This was a scene in the movie. If you look closely, you can see there's a little plate of glass they used.
No, there's not.
No, it's perfect. They were real.
It was all real, and they were in real danger. It was great.
They risked their life for this whole thing.
Yes, they did.
And so there's the fight on the plane while it's spinning. This is something, and James, I want to talk to you about the bald bull, I call him. I don't know what his name is, but come on, he's bald bull.
I think that's right.
And he's boxing him, and again, another character. Every character in this movie, there's no like vanilla characters. Everyone feels like they have a backstory. This bald bull guy, I would swear, probably was doing bare knuckle boxing on his own free time anyways.
His style was great too, like very 30s style boxing.
Yeah, he lifts barbells with like the big round circular weight.
He gets to work on a unicycle.
Yes. And but this was one of the most action-packed, my favorite scenes. You're seeing gasoline catch on fire, things blow up, the propeller spinning, the fighting as Indy's trying to get his gun. Walk us through this little battle.
I love what you said about the fact that you look at this guy and you feel like he has a backstory, and it's very similar to how I felt watching Star Wars: A New Hope. Is like the cantina scene, like every alien you see is like, oh, what they're all about. They probably have something cool going on. And the mechanic that he was fighting with, I always thought of, if anybody's a G.I. Joe fan, he reminded me of Gung Ho from G.I. Joe. So like a Nazi Gung Ho, I suppose, as it were. You know, maybe he's just a mechanic. I don't know. I don't mean to cast aspersions on this guy, but he certainly seemed very gung ho to defend that Nazi plane. So I'm gonna drag him a little bit for that. Right. But yeah, one of the another just incredibly memorable scenes. Great fight, gruesome ending that I remember as a kid. It's sort of all, even though you don't really see anything, but as a kid, I still was always induced to look away. I don't know what that says about me, but even Indy looked away, so I was in good company.
Yeah, it was I wanted to look away too. It is, because it's a gross way to die, and the way they build it, you can kind of feel something's going to happen the whole time they're fighting, and then when you see it coming, I think that's what gets you.
Yeah,
they built it up so well.
Less is more. It sort of felt like to me similar to what, if you watched Goldfinger recently, Oddjob just kicks the crap out of James Bond. Like, Indy had no shot in this fight. He was getting beat from pillar to post, and that propeller is the only thing that could bail him out.
Right, and so he kind of got lucky in this. I want to circle back real quick, though, and tell both of you guys, because we're talking about how the big bad guy came to torture Marion. Just so we know, just so we're all up front, just so we're clear, if I'm ever in a similar situation, I'm ratting you out. I'm ratting you all out, just right away. No break. I as soon as, like, if I'm in a scene where he's like, your fire's dying, I'm like, I'm telling you everything. Don't even need to finish what you're building up to. I'm just gonna tell you.
Shout out to that coat hanger, by the way, for being such an imposing torture device that was not.
Oh yeah, that was great.
I've seen that scene probably 10 times, and every time I forget that he's turning it into a coat hanger. Every single time I'm like, what is this? And then he turns, I'm like, oh, that's right, the coat hanger.
I'm like, oh, nunchucks. Okay.
Just another fastidious, meticulous German.
So Indy eventually starts chasing the truck with the Ark on it on horseback, and once he catches it, the hunter becomes the hunted, as the Nazis now chase him on the truck. Then they fight and drive like it's a Mad Max movie, but eventually Indy gets away and they board a boat back home. Marion and Indy finally get some alone time. And James, walk us through this love scene.
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with The Birds and the Bees, but the love scene is great, but with how it starts with the mirror hitting him in the face, and like, it's this incredible bellow from Harrison Ford, but Marion with the, did you say something? So I don't know if maybe he just screamed in his mind, but I don't want to gloss over the chase scene either, though, because I mean that was incredible, but the sort of where does it hurt leading to them, sharing a kiss only for Indy, like after a double shift, just to have fallen right to sleep. But that's where we get that great line. It's not the years, it's the mileage. And I've commandeered that many a time, not just on this podcast. And so just another great quote.
Is it just me, or does Indy just treat this woman like trash the whole movie?
I mean, I don't know. He's rescued her and everything like that. I mean, sure, he burned her bar down, but he didn't invite, the Nazis in to do that.
He burns her bar down. He leaves her stranded and tied up. He falls asleep when they're about to get personal here. I'm kind of understanding why she was a jerk to him at the beginning of this movie.
Hey, when she was put in that little, what do you call that thing she was
Little
in?
basket.
The basket.
When she was in the basket, he tried. There was a lot of baskets he had to
He
get
blew
through.
her up, he thought.
He didn't know there was TNT.
Yeah, when Indy goes up to Saul, he's like, yeah, Marion's dead. And he's just like, yeah, I heard you blew up her truck that she was in Indiana. Right. You literally shot at her.
And he's like, I was in a murderous race.
You know me.
Anyway, test on Monday. See ya.
I'm going to eat this apple that my student left me. I plan to murder more people. But yeah, James, Andy, I want to talk to you about, James had mentioned this ride on horseback. And I don't know if it's because, again, I'm looking back, but this felt like this needs to be a ride at Disneyland, watching this horseback ride and the truck race and all this other stuff.
It was so cool. Yeah. The part where he's like underneath the car and you're just wondering, it's so realistic. It looks great. Like, I don't know exactly how they shot it, but like him climbing underneath the car, then like zipping under and then, hanging on, as we've all seen him holding onto the rope and stuff. That's kind of one of those iconic scenes again too. And then when he, I had this thought when whoever that guy is, he like kicks out of the truck, who's like also now he's in the front of the truck. I'm like, oh, is he gonna try to do the same thing?
But, he did try.
He tried. He failed. Very like Adventures of Zorro. That whole sequence.
Yeah.
I wonder if that guy was thinking to himself, I knew I should have dieted as the thing breaks. my wife is gonna kill me.
He had.
That was this whole scene was just, again, and like everything, this movie's so fun, and this is where the music for me really clicked, in the sense that obviously it's iconic now, but as I'm watching this, I'm like, how do you not want to go on an adventure when you hear any of this music? It just feels so. I'm not an adventurous type, if you haven't caught on yet, but I'm like, let's go on an adventure. Let's go rummage through some tombs or something. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, they do a really great job. With the music though, you're right. Like, it does such a great job, especially like this is like James was saying, this would be the first time people have seen this movie. You got this brand new film score. You have his like iconic look with the hat. I noticed they did like a great job of like playing the music, and then you'd see like Indy almost like shadowed too. So you're like, that's Indiana Jones, and this is his music. And then he swings on something. It's just like, you're just like really in. They just really like almost like introducing you to a superhero. It's like, here's this guy and here's his music. And it was just very well done, like all around, where you kind of like had everything you needed.
Getting goosebumps just thinking about the music. I mean, one of the all-time great themes ever. And John Williams, obviously so accomplished, but this was another just testament to how good he was. And that theme song I've listened to so many times growing up, and it never fails to get me going and hit right in the heart. And looking at it too, though, is even like the love theme between Marion and Indiana when he thinks she's dead and everything, just does so good of the music taking you on that ride with along what you're seeing in the movie. Ugh.
Yeah. And before getting to the final parts here, I want to talk about just the timelessness of so much of this happening, where I was watching this and I was thinking, this movie was made in 81 and it was about a time in 36, but everything still looks cool. Indy still doesn't look like out of date. He doesn't look like, you watch some movies, like one of the movies we watched before was Lionheart, and with Jean-Claude Van Damme, and everyone's just dressed ridiculous because it was from 1990. But everyone in this movie, Indiana Jones still looks cool. Like, I mean, obviously, if you wore a fedora and a leather jacket, everyone would say, why are you dressed like Indiana Jones? But he still looks so cool. Everyone in this movie, like, it's aged so well. It's incredible.
I think that's one of the advantages to doing a period piece adventure, especially sort of set in that time in the world, because it has such a very distinct sort of fashion sense, distinct sort of what the stakes in the world were. Everybody sort of can pick up on those, pre or in World War II vibes very quickly and understand instantly where we're at, what is the score and why we need to stop these folks. I mean, the greatest antagonists, both in real life and in fiction, are probably Nazis. Mm-hmm. Certainly, right up there with zombies and the like. And so I think that is just such a huge advantage. And before I forget, because I wanted to point this out, my favorite Marvel movie is Captain America, the First Avenger, or Winter Soldier. I go back and forth. Yeah. But in particular, the First Avenger, I think, takes so much from Raiders of the Lost Ark and the Indiana Jones trilogy. Like, those vibes are so clearly there, and that's a period superhero film. And I think that helped it immensely work so well, because if you want to get people to suspend their disbelief, I don't think there's any better way to do that slow boil of disbelief than instantly transporting them to a time in the past.
Yes, and I love that you mentioned Winter Soldier and Captain America's Winter. I'm a Winter Soldier guy, but they actually do give a shout out to Indiana Jones in the First Avenger when Red Skull says Hitler's busy digging for trinkets in the desert. I think is a nod to Indiana Jones.
And absolutely,
I have to bring up James's thought of the most terrifying thing ever, and that's Nazi zombies.
Yeah, isn't there a movie like Dead Snow or something like that? I think it's literally Nazi zombies. How awful.
Right. Not only are they trying to eat my brain, but their political leanings are just...
Yes, exactly. They're eating my brain on two fronts.
Right. So let's talk about this before this train is off the rails. It doesn't remember what the rails look like, but we're going to get it back by going to the fact that while Marion and Indy are on this ship, Nazis board the ship and find the Ark, and Marion gets caught again. The Nazis can't find Indy, though, because he's on their boat. And with it, he goes to their base. He dresses up as a Nazi, and Indy follows the Ark crew and threatens to bazooka it if he doesn't get Marion. But the bad guy calls his bluff, and even though they tie up our heroes, they get the chance to see the Ark opened, but they don't. They close their eyes, and that means that they don't see all the Nazis get their faces melted by weird lady ghost skulls and fire magic blasts. Back home...
Wrath of God, straight out of the Bible.
That's exactly what we expected. Back home, the Ark has gone missing in a warehouse filled to the ceiling with endless boxes that look just like it. So this is the end. So a lot of stuff to break down. We're going to circle back to the beginning of this thing, though, and that is Andy... Indy, so crafty, sneaks onto a boat so he can ride it to the base. But I got to ask you, did he yet again abandon his friends and his girlfriend? They're still on the boat, like giving him thumbs up. It's like, you guys are still captured. Why are you? He abandoned you.
Hey, he's always one step ahead. He's got a plan somewhere. He doesn't know that it'll come.
Maybe one behind.
I think he thinks it's gonna work out somehow. He doesn't maybe have an exact plan, but he knows that somehow he'll get to them when he has time, in his own way.
He does say at one point he's making it up as he goes, so I'll give him a little bit of
He's
credit.
like, I'll find a grenade launcher at some point.
It is classic pulp storytelling, though, too. And, I mean, he is just this guy that is completely overmatched. I mean, it's almost Lovecraftian to the level of which he is. He's taken on an army of Nazis and his greatest rival. I mean, it's... but, he never gives up. So even though he realized discretion was the better part of valor when Marion got captured, as Jack, you said, again, she gets captured. But he's very good at hiding. If Indy has any, he's excellent. He's hide and seek champion. For certain. He's good at finding treasure. He's good at hiding himself. We were talking about the music earlier. Maybe the best use of it, like the most sort of like, yeah, get him, Indy, is when like they're looking for him on the ship and the first mate's like, there he is, and he's swimming to the German U-boat, and it's just like, yes. Like that today, if that were a Marvel movie, that'd be huge applause break.
Yes, that'd be massive. And I love, though, that you make the point that to be a great adventurer, to be a great hero, you need to be good at hiding, because that means I could probably be a great hero.
And great disguises, too.
And speaking of disguise, Andy, we got to talk. This was a funny bit where we've seen so many times the hero knocks out one of the bad guys and takes their outfit. But poor Indy, he's just a little too brawny to fit into this thing.
Are you saying that his outfit is tight on him?
Yes, he's a little too small for him.
I'm sure that was an actor choice.
We're fat shaming him right now, actually.
I did like how he bumped into Bellic, though. I thought that was pretty great.
Yeah, and so
Just showing how good he was at disguises. He
Yes.
bumps into people they don't even know.
right, that was actually just a flex. He did that to show like
Bone up to him,
Doctor.
because he was like, lest we forget, Indy was a little bit jealous when Marion was talking about, you know, her time in Bellic's tent and wearing that fancy dress. Indy was a little jealous there, because deep down Indy loves her.
yeah, well,
He didn't get her a dress.
Yeah, it's true, he did not.
I think
Took off on her.
Andy just looks at her like an artifact to be found.
Well, if she had got trapped in the Well of Souls, Andy would have been right.
So I do want to talk, though. This was actually a big character development point, I think, where Indy actually says he'll forgo the Ark. He'll give it all up as long as he can get Marion back, though, James. Has Indy proven that I'm just a jerk for thinking that this love affair is not meant to be?
I think it shows that yes, like deep down he wants to do the right thing by Marion. I think that it's as plain as the nose on our faces that these two crazy kids belong together. It's just all these sort of perils that befall them. But you said it perfectly earlier. Belloc called his bluff. As much as Indy loves Marion, Indy has devoted his entire life to the search of antiquities and history and archaeology, and the Ark of the Covenant is just a gold shiny MacGuffin too far for him to give it up. So it was a brilliant play by Belloc, and I really love that scene, especially when he like ganks the machine gun from one of the Nazis and tells them all to back off. It's just, Belloc, give me maybe a Belloc prequel or something. I might be into that. It was kind of cool. French archaeologist like the Poirot to Indiana Jones's Sherlock Holmes or something. Although he's more of a Moriarty in this.
You could see him. I love the idea. That actually would be a good show because I could see it being almost like a Loki where he's the bad guy, but you kind of love him for it. Mm-hmm. He's like a little more sinister version.
I really like the Belloc character because it's so. We were talking about earlier how evil the Nazis are, and they're like the alpha and omega antagonist in real life and in fiction. Mm-hmm. Belloc is that much needed shade of gray. He's aligned himself out of convenience with this evil group, but he is not a wholly evil person. He's certainly incredibly nefarious and underhanded. But at no point in this movie did I actually think he had any ill intention towards Marion. He legitimately was upset when they threw her into the Well of Souls. Not upset enough to really make a fuss because he still had his own sort of tunnel vision mission, but he's a great shade of gray, not wholly evil villain in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Andy, I want you to piggyback on that because it is James makes a phenomenal point here about he's not necessarily a bad guy. He's just very selfish and willing to do whatever it takes, which I think when you watch movies, we always say, like, oh, if I was there, I would do this. He's kind of that guy. Like, yeah, I'll do whatever it takes to win. Mm-hmm. But to James' point, he never actually does anything bad, like evil, I guess I should say. I mean,
the whole vetoes and stuff like that. Like, I mean, he's the quintessential, like, Big Brother character, just being like, I'm player one, yoink, I get this. Yeah. Not that I have a big brother that has me bitter.
Well, and James, I guess just real quick, I want to get your thoughts on this because this is the quintessential moment. And you've talked about trying to watch this movie for the first time and what it was like before you knew. So I'm going to give you the floor. Walk us through viewing the opening of the Ark.
I think that, like, just looking at the Ark itself, I was struck by. They nailed it with how it looked. It was not a disappointing reveal of the Ark itself. I thought it was like, wow, this is a very impressive vessel for the Ten Commandments, and this thing that we've been chasing this entire movie lives up to it. It's not like a reveal at the end of whatever insert found footage film, and you're kind of disappointed by when they show it. I definitely got very much so Pulp Fiction vibes too, from like the shine of the Ark and everything like that. opening it up, I know some people, maybe the most dated part of the movie is the special effects when the Ark does its thing and the melting of Belloc and the Nazis and stuff like that. And yes, not the greatest special effects, but I actually really like it. I don't think it holds up to today's sort of technological standards, but as far as storytelling goes and being satisfying reveal, it still works for me.
I like that you said that, because in a way, maybe it's because I've grown up and loved this movie for so long. The fact that it's not good makes it better, I think. Like the way the guy's face melts feels like, oh yeah, it's the power of God melting his face. That's how that would look. If it was fire, it'd be different. But this is a supernatural thing happening here. Andy, now this is one of the most classic moments. I want to try to talk to me about them opening this and them not looking and what's going on. Try to tell me about it as if this was the first viewing.
I thought it was kind of had some Evil Dead vibes to it, where it was just like kind of creepy and like bad CGI, but I was all in for it. Like I thought it was great. And the fact that Harrison Ford and Marion are up, like captured, they are out of the way of all these evil spirits, because I was kind of thinking, I'm like, couldn't the spirits have just like gone up a little bit higher and kind of knocked them out? But I love how it was just, you just close your eyes, you'll be fine. Like, I don't know why, I just thought it was just like a nice, simple kind of way to end it all. I thought it was great. I like all the faces melting and whatnot. But
I always viewed their survival as, because they closed their eyes, that God spared them because it was not like their own like avarice or whatever, like coveting this ark. That's the only way that they could survive that encounter. Mm-hmm. But it was to what we talked about much earlier. It was scary though. Like there is this like very sort of harrowing feel to what's going on with the spirits. It's very eerie, very creepy.
And almost with the way the spirits came out, because, when I remember this scene, I don't really remember the spirits part. I remember the face melting. I think that's what everyone thinks about. And so when you see like the ghost woman looking at the screen and stuff, there was this like, what is going on? And that's exactly what I think you're supposed to feel is, what is this? What's happening?
I thought maybe I missed something too. I'm like, wait, who's that lady? I thought I was supposed to know her.
Right.
Did they mention her earlier?
Did they? I was looking back. Did they actually hint something about closing your eyes being the way to avoid what happens, or was that just something that Indy figured out on the moment? Like, was there a tease of some kind? Like, was there like a note that he said something about like those who see it are going to die or something?
I don't think so. I think the only thing that he could have gotten it from was like that concept art in that old book, like the power of God shining out and everything. And I think that was sort of the eureka moment. Like we can't look, like the just sheer luminescence of it, can't look at it kind of deal.
Oh, you're right, because there was that image they saw and everyone around it was dead in that picture.
Yes.
So that does make sense. And then I guess as a viewer, and when we talk about how real this is, I can believe it because Andy has figured out how traps work. And we've been told that. So he would understand, like, I bet this is how it works. I don't know. Or maybe he was just scared and was like, I can't watch.
It'll go easier if we're just not looking at our own demise.
So the last part here, and Andy, we'll start with you, is when it's gone missing again, and how iconic and how cool of a way to end this movie. At least I think it was cool that it just gets put in a box and put in a giant warehouse. And how many treasures are sitting in a warehouse in a box right now that we can't find because it's mislabeled?
Yeah, I just feel like I forgot about that scene. I don't think I remember it actually, but it reminded me, there's a movie called The Conjuring that's a scary movie, and they have a thing where they put all the evil things all in one room. And that's terrifying to have, like, hey, you walk into this room, every one of these things is evil. So I kind of had that feeling of like, I want to see the movie where somebody breaks into that warehouse and just starts opening up some stuff just to see what happens. But that warehouse is huge. There's so much stuff in there. I'm like, wow, so many adventures.
That movie is actually called Storage Wars. It's a great TV series on A&E.
Oh man, that's all that's in there.
Dave Hester actually got the Ark of the Covenant.
I was gonna say that'd be a short movie because they'd open everything up to look at it. They'd open up the Ark and they would die, and that would be the end of the movie. Then what's in here? Blah.
Well, hopefully you open that one last.
But James, as we kind of wrap up this movie, any final thoughts on Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Man, I just it's been so fun talking about it and reliving it. I love, in terms of the final scenes of the movie, William Hootkin's character, again, the top men that always stuck with me as a kid is just like with the ultimate bureaucrat brush off by William Hootkins there. And I want to give a shout out to the Ark for burning off the Nazi logos when they put it in that crate. I love that. Even underrated. It's like the T-Rex in Jurassic Park. The Ark of the Covenant might not seem like it on our team. It's on our team, and that's why Indian and Marion are still alive to talk about it. But I thought it was a great sort of film noir-y finish here, is that they did live, they got the Ark, but it's slipped through their fingers. They don't have it. It's, the Maltese Falcon was fake all along kind of thing. But I really appreciated that, and just how everything got wrapped up was wonderful. And looking at it as a standalone movie, what just a fantastic adventure. What a great popcorn ride Indiana Jones Raiders Lost Ark was. So good.
Andy, any final thoughts from you? And James, you can also answer this question too before we get to the final parts of the show. Andy, final thoughts? And if they rebooted it with someone else, would you be okay? Or is this an untouchable character and franchise?
Oh, wow. Well, I think this movie I don't want to say perfection, but it pretty much is. Just like you got best director, writing, the movie score, everything was just great. Like, you just watch it, you go, that's a pretty perfect movie. Like, there wasn't anything really in there where I was like, oh, I don't know about that. Like, oh, that movie is great. Oh, except for that one part. Like the whole movie, I enjoyed the entire everything in it. And no, they can't recast Indiana Jones. It's Harrison Ford, man.
And you agree, James? I see you nodding your head.
100%, and echo all of that sentiment. And just again, to be the old man, how much fun this was to just watch a movie that it wasn't browbeating me. It wasn't trying to be overly funny in spite of itself, and just really didn't feel hit over the head at any point with anything, with nonsensical humor or anything. It was a great adventure movie. Indiana Jones, one of the most absolutely instantly recognizable film characters of all time. You cannot reboot that. You cannot recast that. It is Harrison Ford. They shouldn't be making any more. They shouldn't have made Crystal Skull. This other one that they're going to be making now is going to be an absolute Ark of the Covenant opening nightmare. Like, it is a face melter. Do not make this movie. It will unleash the wrath of God. I just think they should have left well enough alone with Raiders, Temple of Doom, and The Last Crusade.
Well, I was going to say they should remake it with Zac Efron, but I guess not.
I think Jack Farmer could be a good Indiana Jones, if you ask me. You got the look.
Listen, I can hide with the best of them. I can leave my friends behind. I'd be great at it. So this is where, real quick, we do a quick little segment called, now you've heard of 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, I'm sure, James, where you can connect any movie to Kevin Bacon within 6 moves. And I always task Andy, can we do a 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon with Raiders of the Lost Ark?
This one is pretty easy, Jack. We're going to go Harrison Ford in The Devil's Own with Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt was in Sleepers with Kevin Bacon.
So, James, if you watch the show, you'll know that it almost always goes to Sleepers.
Too easy.
Almost every movie goes through Sleepers. So
that's the real fulcrum of 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, take that out. I don't know if we'd be able to do this, but That's how it works. So that does it for this episode. So the next episode, this was 1981, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Next episode is going to be 1982 with 48 Hours. That'll be a fun one. Then we go to 1983 for Kroll. And in 1984, Bachelor Party. So that's what we got coming up.
Wow.
But before we go, James, I know you're doing all sorts of stuff with the Golden State Warriors, with the wrestling and all that other stuff. Where can the world find you online, and what are some stuff you're working on now?
Well, please, thank you for having me, and this was great fun. You can check me out at James Kincaid on Twitter. That's the traditional Scottish spelling, Kincaid, and at the James Kincaid on Instagram, because some other nefarious archaeologist has just regular at James Kincaid. But yeah, I know, exactly. It's not even an active account. I've reported anyway. It's a whole thing. But yeah, please check out West Coast Pro Wrestling. It's the promotion, my home promotion here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and they've been really just putting on phenomenal shows, and I'm fortunate enough to be the lead play-by-play commentator for them. So either check them out live if you're in the Bay Area, or you can watch us live on IWTV. Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, the United Wrestling Network, of which Jack Farmer is also a part of. All great things to check out. So we stay busy.
Yes. And lots of fun stuff. Always great chatting with you there. Andy Rossi, how about yourself?
You can find me at Just Andy Rossi. Check me out.
Yes, and you've got Dead Body Movie as well, making the rounds as of recording still at film festivals worldwide, winning awards all over the place. Can't wait for that to get released soon. And you can find me, I'm Jack Farmer. You can find me at Real Jack Farmer across all social media, where you can check me out on the MacMania podcast, a wrestling show from The Ringer and Spotify, as well as Championship Wrestling from Hollywood with James Kincaid. We also have Santino Brothers are doing a show, Return of the King. Brody King's going to be there, and I am going to be on commentary for that one in February 19th, 2022, depending on when you listen to this. So,
Might have been a month ago.
So check it out, why don't you? That does it for us. Thank you so much. We'll be back next time with 1982's 48 Hours, and we'll see you then.